Senator Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we talk about this really important topic of future of biotech, I think it's important to note that since President Trump took office and Secretary Kennedy was confirmed, the Trump administration has terminated $2.3 billion in life-saving research that was funded by the NIH. They tried to cut billions more from our medical research labs in every state by illegally implementing a new indirect cost policy. They proposed gutting the NIH budget by 43%. That's about $20 billion. They've laid off thousands of scientists and grant administrators at NIH and across HHS. They have slowed the FDA's review of drugs and medical products by firing thousands of staffs at the agencies, and they have halted more than 100 clinical trials that were working on discovering promising new treatments and cures. So it seems to me that this administration has declared war on public health, and those examples are just a few of many. So Dr. Kesselheim, I wanted to ask you, does canceling more than 5,000 NIH grants on everything from cancer to Alzheimer's disease increase or decrease American competitiveness in biomedical research and innovation?
It substantially decreases it because those, we will lose the competitive battle that we have with academic institutions and research institutions in other countries if we don't continue to have that level of support and more that we need in this country. That the support for research at those centers that ultimately then lead to spin-off companies or other development. That's where we get our cures from, and we really need that in order to stay competitive with science that's going on around the world.
Yeah, and I think that we should note that more than 99% of all new drugs approved by the FDA from 2010 through 2019 were actually built on a foundation of NIH-funded research. So it's pretty clear that our country's historical success that you've all talked about relied on a really strong pipeline from basic research through pharmaceutical development and our investments that we make here. Dr. Ramachandran, what do the administration's cut at NIH and FDA mean for pharmaceutical companies' ability to bring new treatments and treatment and medicine to patients?
There's both a short-term and a long-term problem. Obviously, in the short term, you mentioned clinical trials being canceled. These are oftentimes kind of the late-stage development steps for us to be able to see, is a therapy potentially safe and effective for patients? And that is not as happening as often, and there's been delays in terms of awarding also grants as well. And then the cuts you mentioned to FDA is causing real-time effects in terms of getting new therapies reviewed in a timely manner, much less approved. So that means treatments potentially that are safe and effective that are not reaching patients. On a long-term perspective, NIH is the agency responsible for the foundational research that leads to the startup companies that Mr. Crowley was talking about, that other senators have also mentioned before, that have come across various states as well. And that is really kind of the catalyst for innovation in the first place. If we don't have that sort of investment in NIH, in 5-10 years down the line, we're not going to be seeing new treatments that are going to be transformative for our patients. And we've heard from the biotech industry, they do not have the resources to make up for any sort of shortfalls from the NIH, nor do they have the compulsion to do so because they have shareholders who want to see short-term returns, right? That it's not a 10-year pipeline for them that they're looking at. They're looking for returns in 1 to 5 years, typically. On top of that, our trainees that we're seeing in our academic institutions in particular are leaving the United States to go to other countries because they are not seeing opportunities both in the public sector and academic institutions to continue this research, much less in also the private sector. There have been huge job cuts also there as well.
Thank you. And Mr. Crowley, I wanted to ask you that first of all, thank you for sharing your family's personal experience. That was I think a story many of us need to remember, that these investments that we make pay off for individuals, and we cannot ignore that. I hope everybody recognizes that. I wanted to ask you specifically because NIH operates the Rare Disease Clinical Research Network, and their chaotic policy changes and firings of more than 1,600 scientists and grant administrators at NIH has upended many of the clinical trials researchers are now hearing they may not be able to reapply for some of this funding for more than 5 years from now. So talk to me about how canceling rare disease clinical trials and suspending future funding impacts rare disease patients and their families.
I think it has a direct impact, Senator. Again, in that virtuous circle of innovation, the NIH plays a very, very important role in foundational research and facilitating translational research as well. So for us, for the entire industry in biotechnology, it remains incredibly important as well, and we'd support continued funding of the NIH.
Well, thank you. I am out of time, but Mr. Chairman, I think we all need to, as members of Congress, recognize we have a responsibility here to fund those critical agencies and not decimate the future with these layoffs and mass firings and losing the funding.
I'll mention that to the ranking member of the Appropriations Committee.
Thank you, and everybody else who votes. Thank you.